Hello, hello. Here I am with my crazy hair. Today has been very funny because I'm letting my grays grow. So I have a lot of hair standing up. So if you have ever felt different, if you felt that you were not built for this world, or that you don't understand how to place yourself. Today I'm gonna talk a little bit of my take on indigo energy, starseed souls, and what I believe means for them to experience what we call the matrix. So stay with me. If this is something that actually you may be interested in, because I believe that parents that do not know or are indigos or star seeds have difficulties in understanding the the capacity that these kids have to experience things that they may not see. So, based on my experience, I can share some points that I think will be outside of the medicines and the therapies that they do, for the parents to be more aware of what these kids are seeing. So instead of dismissing them, they can actually start paying attention. And even when they don't share the same world, they can be supportive of them. So, again, if you're interested in this, stay tuned because we're going to give it like a few minutes for people to come in and then start speaking or talking about this. That for me, it would have been a game changer if my parents would have my abilities, and instead of pushing them away, would understand them even though they didn't see them. So, yep, stay tuned. We're going to start in a little bit. Today is a no makeup day. I decided not to wear makeup today. My hair is messy because my grays are having a battle of their own and a mind. Just gonna do my typical bun. I love doing this home because I think that it helps my hair grow. Stuff that we think about, right? Maybe it's just a mindset and it grows because of it. Just because my mind is set on that. So yeah, at least my hairs are not standing that much. Let me clean my glasses because blind people need cool glasses that are clean and not like mine that are totally foggy. I think that I touched them and I had hand cream, so yeah, I may have to wash them later. I'm new to doing lives, but yesterday I had an amazing conversation with a friend of mine that I think could benefit also other parents out there. So if you're watching, let's start diving in the subject. When I was a little kid and nighttime will come, I will close my eyes and my parents would not understand why I always needed a light to be on. What they couldn't see that I could see is every time the lights went off, I was able to see shadows. Um, since I was so little, I didn't know what it was, so they scared me because it was like hands around the different edges of the room. So I felt that I couldn't tell my parents what I was seeing because in the past, when I will do or when I will say something supernatural was going to happen, I was always told that that was not good. So imagine a kid that when they express, like for an example, I used to tell my parents, hey, there's gonna be an earthquake or a volcano is gonna erupt or things like that, right? They don't have the abilities I have to read energy and nature and forces, so they wouldn't understand and they would try to shut down. With the years, I was always told by grown-ups that were very wise that I was an old soul. And you guys probably are familiar with that term, old souls. The reason why you're called an old soul is nothing more than you having the capacity of connecting with divine consciousness, which everybody can do, but some of us are born with a more natural connection. This connection wasn't there from the start. I had a death experience, almost death experience, or something like that. I was about, I would say, what, 1 or 2 years old. I don't remember the age, but I remember what happened. I remember that I was standing and there was a table and someone was holding my hand, and I was seeing myself in the table with a lot of people around me dressed in white and in blue, and they were ripping out my clothes with a scissor and they were working on me. So I looked at the entity that was holding my hand and I felt peace and calm. When that happened, I never knew what was it, right? And apparently because it was a traumatic event, I never remembered that specific instance. I actually started remembering that instance when I was 8, 12, and they did a regression. A psychologist did a regression on me because I was presenting. What was it that was happening? Something was happening in school that I was not paying attention to the teachers, and they thought it was like psychological. And it was that since I was more intelligent than the kids my age, they had me on a higher grade or level than the kids my age, and the psychologist of the school decided that I should have gone back. So let's say I was in grade first grade and they skipped me to second, but then the lady that became the new psychologist said no, she has to go back to first. So what was happening is I was getting bored in school, and because I knew what they were talking about, I already saw it, I already learned it, and I was always chatting but still acing every single one of my exams. So at that point I started getting bored and coming home depressed or sad, crying because I was bored at school and there was nothing new to learn and I wanted something new to learn. So my parents thought that I was going to depression and they sent me to the psychologist, and the psychologist actually at that point told them that I had spiritual abilities and that I was too intelligent for them to have put me back on a lower grade. Anywho, where I'm coming from, if you have a kid, even though we're not talking, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not talking about taking them off of meds or anything like that. What I'm talking about is the support they need from their parents. When you have a kid that has ADHD or they have there's another condition that is very important to point here. Outside of HDAD, PTSD attacks, and autism, mild autism or a little bit higher. What I want you to understand is these kids feel energies that maybe you as parents don't understand. I am living proof of that. So I was always thinking that people would not understand me if I spoke about these things, because I was always told to shut up, because people were going to think I was crazy or whatever. Now that we're evolved and a lot of people have been less afraid to speak of their gifts, parents that have kids with these conditions, they need to have a different approach with their kids. And what I'm saying is, even if you don't understand, don't think your kid is inventing these things, because you may not see it, but they do. I can see things that other people cannot see. So, mind you, if you as a parent tell your kid you're lying, what's going to happen when you tell your kid that they're lying and they're not? They're not going to understand what true and lies are, and they're going to start lying compulsively. Or they're going to start becoming aggravated by not being able to communicate with you because you are telling them that they are lying when they probably are not. You are the one that may not see what they see. Kids with these abilities will be diagnosed different conditions. And yes, they do have to continue treatment, but the parents' acknowledgement of an experience of energetic levels, it's very important. Because for an example, if the kid is experiencing seeing shadows like I did, and parents are not supportive of that by giving them the security they need to understand that that is not gonna be something harmful, and they dismiss them, then you're gonna see their kids are gonna start peeing your bed. They're gonna start being scared of sleeping alone. They're gonna become clingy. They might create attachments to specific toys because they need to. With this said, and if you've never heard about this, I recommend you to start understanding how the neurological sensories of a kid work, or of a human actually, because it's the same for everyone. It's just that in the earliest stages, if you actually become not the safety blanket, but the understanding parent, then the kids will have a higher chance to stop feeling disassociated from the matrix or from the world that they're living in. I promote that you explore what kind of artistic vein they bring with them. And in order for them to open up with you, you have to be open minded. Now, if you understand that your kid is a liar because they constantly lie, that's something different. But if you understand where I'm coming from, you can understand that your kid probably has a heart of gold, and they're always taken advantage of because they have an innocence that other people don't have, because they're already conditioned by their upbringing. So I didn't know why I had to share this. I just know that my life would have been totally different if at the time where I was born and the time that I was raised, my parents would have a more open mind and not such a strict mind on religion that they had at that time, so they could be more open to the spiritual gifts that I brought with me. after that experience. So for you to understand the experience, I was like a 1 and a half old, and my grandma was a teacher. She taught me how to speak very clearly since I was a very, very, very little kid. So I was just crunching in bed. My appendix apparently exploded, and since I was the type of person that I wouldn't speak up or fuzz when I had pain or whatever, my mom saw my discomfort, and then she asked me what was going on, and then I start crying and saying, this hurts, this hurts. So they called my doctor, and he sent an ambulance right away. They have to move me in an airplane because my appendix ruptured and I was about to die. So when I get to the hospital, I apparently did pass away for a little bit, and they brought me back. And after that, I started seeing these gifts and this stuff after that. What happened was that there was a gap between my early steps from 2 to 6, where being an only child, I was able to play by myself, and I was always having my imaginary friends that they were not that imaginary. So my parents thought that I was a very creative person, and they will like put me into dance and music classes or whatever. So at least that helped. Um I did a lot of like manual stuff like sewing or cross stitch or things like that, which that actually helped me channel my energy. Um Consequently, since they started telling me that I was lying and that I shouldn't speak about these things because people were thinking or were gonna think that I was crazy, I started to force myself to fit in. So instead of saying how I was feeling, I was always faking that I was okay. Even though I felt bad or I felt good, I never communicated because I knew that if I did say what was the truth, they were going to tell me I was a liar. So when I was age 12 and I was starting my rebellion part of it, when I didn't want to shush my gifts anymore, that time they also took me again to the psychologist, and they did a regression on me. And it was right after that regression that I was able to remember what happened when I was a 1.5 year old, because I saw it. And when I got home, I went to my grandmother and say, hey grandmother, what day was it that I was wearing this overall that was this color with this shirt and blah blah and this shoes and this da 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 da, and I had this here, like I had a little bow. And she opened her eyes like she was like bedazzled, and then she told me, "Uh, how do you remember that?" And I'm like, I don't know, I know they did a regression on me and I remember that completely. There was a person holding my hand, and it was a person that had a lot of light. So my grandmother, that was so Catholic, she took it like off of proportion, and they didn't know how to handle the experience. They thought I was lying again, and the way they handled the experience was by conditioning me that I wouldn't receive a reward if I wouldn't shut up about what I was talking about. Because in their head, they were thinking that people were going to talk bad about them, or people were going to think that I was crazy. But yet, I was an A student. So it, in our head, what goes on is we don't have somebody that we can speak to. And then that starts the behavioral patterns and problems that we develop, and we become avoidant at times. I actually wasn't avoidant, I was more incapable of understanding that my innocence can get me in trouble. I thought that everybody was good because I could see their souls, right? I thought that nobody will harm me, and I got myself in trouble because of it, because I tried one. So when I come into, obviously, days pass, years pass, and when I come to my adult years and I notice that the pattern continued to repeat, I decided to start a spiritual awakening, and that's why I'm here. Within the awakening, I got triggered with PTSD. And then when I started analyzing the nervous system, I realized that my PTSD was nothing else that all those traumas from when I was a kid that my parents pushed aside because of, I guess, the type of culture they had or the style of life that they lived. They didn't care about me because they were very caring parents. They did have their own childhood wounds that they have to heal, but my parents never, like, the way that they, I would say, like, I was never abused at home. Like, if I was hit twice in my life, it was a lot. If my mom will open her eyes, I will shut up because I knew that that's it. Respect, boundary, I'm done, right? And I was not rebellious in the way of being disrespectful. That started happening after I passed the 21 marker, because of a traumatic event that I experienced. But and I became defensive. But when I actually, after the last time that I had a toxic relationship, I started healing. And when I thought that I was fully healed, um I tried to understand relationships. And unfortunately, it wasn't the best scenario because eventually my PTSD from all those traumas I had in my past years started flourishing, because of the circumstances. So, long story short, if you have a starseed indigo kid or a kid that has an overactive imagination, the worst thing you can do is to shut them up. The best thing you can do, level down to their level, lower down to their level, and if they're having an outburst, allow them to have it. But when they're done, just ask them, "Do you need me to hug you?" They will let you know, because these kids are clingy in our human kind of lingo of conditioning. They're not clingy. They're just people that know what unconditional love is. They have the purity and the innocence of a heart that is pure as what everybody identify as the color white. And when you actually acknowledge their purity of their heart, they will be able to express what they've been hiding. And if they tell you stories like the one that I'm telling you, just understand that you need to protect them from energies, um and do spiritual, I would say, retreats with them, where they can learn how to connect to nature, and you have to learn ways on how to explain to them what is not good and bad, what is a projection, and what is a mirror. Why? Because there's no good and bad. Yes, there are evil things going on here and there, but there's no good and bad. What there is people that project or people that reflect. And whenever you understand that, they, in their level of experience with energy, will capture more and have more discernment on specifically who they can trust or who they can't trust. And I say this and I stress it because the majority of these kids are not understood by parents, and they end up doing what either the bullies or the people with bad habits push them to do because they want to be accepted. So luckily I never fell into having patterns that lasted too long. I did remember there was a time in my life that I would go out and dance and just not wanting to be in my house because I understood that they didn't understand me and I was already of age and I could be out there. But that search that they're gonna continue to look for is that misunderstanding that's happening at home. So I highly recommend that if you do have an indigo child at home or a starseed, that for once you are not blinded by the conditionings and the stigmas that the world has on this kind of beautiful and amazing kids. So you can actually teach them how to conquer the game of life. And this happens also with people with autism, and it happens also with people with bipolar disorder, and it happens with people that suffer or kids that suffer of panic attacks and all of these. There are things that they are experiencing that you don't understand. So whenever you have a chance, give yourself the chance to widen your mindset and maybe look at from that standpoint and allow these kids to have a chance of feeling welcome, because the love that these kids emanate, it's like, have you ever seen a child with Down syndrome? If they have not been corrupted by their elders or their family, these are kids that have a pure heart. And again, kids that are misunderstood because the only thing they know is no evil. They know only goodness. And that's why others take advantage of them. Same happens with people like us that have disabilities, that we see good in everyone because that's the frequency we vibrate in. It's a frequency that doesn't see anybody as good or bad. They see them just as other souls that have light and darkness. And we have an understanding that not everybody's perfect, but at times we also develop escapism modes. And within these escapism modes, many things can happen, like people taking the wrong way out or becoming addicted to different things, like smoking or drugs or whatever, right? Um, Alcoholism and things like that. So, yeah, if you're planning to have kids, just remember that you might be the proud father of an indigo, starseed, or highly intelligent and connected human being with the divine. And instead of shutting them down, you need to give them an opportunity to expand, because these are the kids that are going to change this world. They are the ones that heal the world from all the evilness. But you need to know how to raise them so they can actually all fulfill their purposes in this place. So I hope that helps parents that have kids with these conditions and abilities at home. And yeah, I'm just here to share my journey and share with you guys Instead of taking my mouse, I hit my water. Oh, yeah. That's typical me. Winded. Bye. Good night.